Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode, a New Year's episode. Episode in the new year, rather, of the Counterpoise podcast. I want to welcome you all. I'm your host, Everett Stevenson, joined along with one of my co-hosts.
I am your other co-host, Samantha Adams. We are missing our third co-host, that's Malik Foster. He's not here right now, but I'm sure he wishes you guys a happy new year as well. So we're just gonna go ahead and jump right in. Today we're talking about protecting our legends. And when I say protecting our legends, I'm talking about our Black legends. What triggered the topic, the thought behind the topic was, I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but Keith Murray. Keith Murray is a hip hop legend. Most notable for his song, The Most Beautifulest Thing in This World.
Like that.
I get in, yeah. And then he's got a number of other songs. At some point, he got locked up, went away. He went away for a little while. And when he came back, he didn't bounce back the way we thought he would. But, you know, he's still our legend. He's ours. He's a member of our community. We love him. Let me say our diaspora, because, you know, we've talked about that community thing. And so, you know, he did this interview. I can't remember with the name of the people, the name of the company he did the interview with, but he did this interview and he went into this graphic detail about have given Shauna, a member of DTP, which was Ludacris's label, oral sex. And so this graphic detail. And then in another interview with somebody else, he said that him and Foxy Brown were giving each other oral sex at some point. And that was when she was engaged to Corrupt. Well, here's the thing. Foxy Brown came back and said it never happened. And Shauna said she never met him. And so it just triggered a thought. Shauna also came back and she said, you know, she was laughing about it. She thought it was funny at first. And then she just had to take a step back because people started sending her all kind of videos of Keith Murray in the project, you know, doing all kind of crazy stuff. And people was just laughing at him. You know what I mean? And the thing about it is, you know, who's there to protect him? Who's there to protect him? He's one of ours. He's our legend. He's one of our legends. And rather than saying, you know, don't film him, let's try to find a way to get him some help, things like that. They're just putting it out there, you know? And so before I just keep running my mouth, I'm gonna give E a chance to chime in on that.
Absolutely. I think one thing about it is that was a tragic situation just because, like, I'm gonna take it just from the male standpoint, you know, before we get into like the more serious note of the mental health. Just looking at it from like just being a guy, like you don't necessarily want to put your exploits out there. You know what I'm saying? Just from being like a stand-up dude, like that's just not the move. Like you don't ever want to, you know, kiss and tell, as they would say. And I mean, we saw that being done like in the most graphic of manners, right? And it was just like kind of like, so like that was like, you did it on that front. And then on top of that, then it became more of like the issue of what you just were just mentioning, where, you know, the young lady said that she doesn't even know the man. And if that's her stance, then you know what I'm saying. I think it's more of a more serious issue because it's like now you just making stuff up to somebody that doesn't really know you, and it kind of speaks to, like you said, the mental illness, the lack of, you know, the lack of care that was being displayed in the way that he's kind of taking care of himself. So when we look at those two things in general, like it made it more of a tragic story than it was at first. It kind of, like you said, may have been a little bit funnier. We was able to kind of get some laughs because it just seemed real animated and just bizarre, you know, just to hear. But once you take a deeper dive at it and look at it and realize that this is somebody that's displaying mental illness, then you kind of look at it and say to yourself, okay, man, dang, like, should this have been aired? Should this been something that, we probably should have looked at that and been like, okay, maybe, okay, bro, like, hold on, let's hold off on the interview. Are you okay? You good? You know what I'm saying? Do you know what the day is? Do you know what's going on? You know what I mean? And looked at it from that standpoint because, yeah, like Keith Murray hadn't been really in mainstream trending society for quite some time, and then for this to be his I don't want to say claim to fame, but the thing that brought him back up to be in trending again. Yeah, for him to be trending again isn't such a good look. And, I think that's also can be indicative of him and his family as well, for, him to be a laughing stock of people coming into 2023. So that was kind of like how I looked at the situation. I think it also, unfortunately brought in two Black women into the conversation as well. And kind of, I want to say like, somebody said that they had sex with somebody isn't necessarily a bad light, but the way in the graphic way in which he did it was what made it seem like so extra, because it was just like, man, you being mad wild with the story and stuff like that. So
the other part about it is that it never happened though. That's the part that gets me, right? So like based on what the women are saying, Shauna and Foxy Brown are saying, like it never happened. And I think also too, even if it's not mental illness, it's definitely probably some addiction going, and that right there is the other concern. That
I also posed the question too, and I think this is one thing that made me think, because like there are times where things may occur, and then there are times where things may occur, but then one party may not want to admit to it for whatever reasons. You know what I'm saying? If somebody falls off and they look bad, and then you have to admit that that was somebody that you was dealing with in the past, that could be a negative reflection on you. So maybe that's at play here. I don't necessarily know so much or whatever, but I do think that that's something I also want to put in mind, because we have seen examples of which people say, hey, somebody may say one thing, but they'll deny it. You know what I'm saying? And say, well, that wasn't really the case. And it'll come later on it will later on be found out to be that actually was the case. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going on in this situation, but we have seen people lie. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of guys who have lied on their sexual experiences. That happens every day in society. You know what I'm saying? And so, that I don't want to say that's commonplace, but it actually is though, because some people do it. When I was coming up, that was one of the worst things you could ever do. It was almost like losing your dignity. We call it lying on your, lying on your manhood.
Yeah, lying on yourself.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Lying on your manhood.
Clean.
And it's like, like that's what you gotta do. You gotta make stuff up. But like, and again, I think it's like a maturity thing, because coming up, you kind of want to seem like, okay, cool. Like the thought process is you want to make it look like, oh, you doing stuff. You out here, having your way, if you will, with women and things like that. So you may exaggerate something, but like where we came from, it's like, yo, you ain't gotta lie. Like, you know what I'm saying? If you did, you did. If you did. But more importantly, it's like, even if you did, if anything, you would say you didn't, just because you don't want nothing to go back, because you know how the game go. Somebody be such and such said, and they pillow talking and saying some other little slick stuff behind your back, trying to throw dirt on your name just so that they can get on. So, it's tragic. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like, if like
that's the other part about it. Yeah, because that's the other part about it, right? Like just playing devil's advocate. What if he's telling the truth? Right? What if he's telling the truth? And Shauna and Foxy, because they have
moved on in life and have families.
Not that, but like they have a higher level of not integrity. Like people are more inclined to believe them. You know what I'm saying? People might be more inclined to believe them. So now here he is. He could be telling the truth, but he looks stupid because you have two women out here that people may believe. Like that's just another way of looking at it. as a possibility of what's really going on here. But at the end of the day, like you said, I think that somebody should have stopped him from doing all that in that interview. I don't care. I don't expect the interviewer to do it. I don't, because they're always going to be looking for ratings. But people from his team, his publicist, whoever's there with him, should have been, yo, nah, we're not doing that. Or we're stopping the interview. Like, no, we will reschedule. We can come back. Now is not the time. You know, things like that. You got to find ways to keep your people protected. And I think that it's important. I think that it's important to remember that, because that's still his image. Like he's a legend. And so because he's a legend, people are going to remember certain things about him, right? Which leads me to like two other examples, right? You have Old Dirty Bastard and you have DMX, right? Well, Old Dirty Bastard.
One second. Let me just say this too. I just think before we move off of him, like if you are lying, like why just pick them two random women? Like, was it just kind of like, because I feel like was it kind of like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna just say them so that, you know what I'm saying, whatever, I don't necessarily think that they may respond, whatever the case may be. Or like, if you gonna lie, like why not just go all out with the lie? Like, you know what I'm saying, and pick whoever you wanted to pick. Like it was Miss America 98. You know what I'm saying? And like, why not just pick, like, you know what I'm saying, whoever? Like, if you just gonna tell a random ass lie, but that's why kind of looks like, you know, I don't know, you know, it's a little.
It could be truth to it, but it also could be two women that he wanted and never got. You know what I'm saying? It could be two women that he wanted and never got. And
or
so, you know,
about, and then,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying, now you
or, you know, had a whole relationship with him in his mind and it never happened in real life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Depending on where he's at, whether it's, you know, mental health stuff, whether it's drugs, whether it's both. You know, we don't know. Those are the type of things we'll never know the truth to, you know. But when I was talking about like keeping him protected, two other people that come to mind are like Old Dirty Bastard and DMX, right? I bring up Old Dirty Bastard, God bless the dead, both him and DMX, rest in peace. Because with the both of them, they both had drug problems, you know. And with Old Dirty Bastard, he would say whatever the hell he wanted. Nobody could stop him, right? But when he was way out there, the people he was around wasn't really there to tell him, yo, stop, yo, chill. And next thing you know, he died. You know, it didn't have to be like that for him. He had all them kids. He had like 13 kids, all the kind of stuff, you know, and it really had an impact on the hip hop community because, you know, the Wu-Tang Clan is the biggest rap group ever, right? And every single one of them dudes can rap. And they had such an impact on the community, not just the community, on the world, right? Because you can go anywhere in the world and they've heard of the Wu-Tang Clan, and they can tell you all 9 members of that clan. And he didn't have to go out like that. You know what I'm saying? Now, granted, you can't stop people from, you know, doing drugs and things like that. Those are things and dealing with their addictions and mental health. Like those are absolutely things that people have to be able to do themselves, but you can try to help protect their image in the meantime, right? You might not be able to get it all, do it all, whatever, but it's definitely possible to say, hey, we're not gonna do this, or hey, we should try that, or hey, you're not in a good space, let's reschedule. Things like that to try to help keep them protected, rather than whipping out your phone and recording it and putting it up on social media for everybody to see so people could get some free laughs, when the truth of the matter is that person is sick one way or another and they need help. And so I think it's important to just recognize that. Like even with DMX, X was in and out of like trying to get his life together. He had been clean for a while, then he relapsed. Like it was just real sad. And then with his mental health stuff, constantly in and out of jail, things like that. And like, I think I think with DMX, it was kind of hard to protect his image because he was always outside. You know what I'm saying? He was a wild dude, you know? But at the end of the day, we shouldn't have known about some of the things that was happening with some of these people, you know? And I think that it's important to recognize, sorry guys, that's in my eye. It's important to recognize that we have to do a better job about protecting our legends, because think about how often we come across other people that, oh my God, I didn't even know they was on drugs. I didn't even know they had a mental health issue. I didn't know this, I didn't know that. And then something happens because somebody was there to protect their image the whole way. So, you know, E, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, as an example of a person who may have been, I don't want to say suffering in silence, but their team kind of protected their image. To add on to what you were talking about, we could look at, you know, Chadwick Boswick, and how he was dealing with what he was dealing with privately. And his family was able to make sure that it didn't leak, that it wasn't nothing that was sold to, you know what I'm saying, any news articles or anyone else to make, you know, a story about it or anything like that. He was able to kind of handle things and go in a way that he chose to go for himself. And I think, you know, that was an example of people, you know, respecting individuals' mind. I think a second example in which I could think of, in which, you know, what we're talking about was actually performed correctly, may have been the story of Delonte West. I don't know if people remember a while back, there was an image in which somebody seen Delonte on a street somewhere. He really wasn't. Well, I'm sorry.
He's back on.
I don't know about recently. It was just, I'm just talking about when he, you know, when he kind of got back into like the mainstream media. He was going through some things, and you know, I think they said like Mark Cuban or somebody kind of got with them, try to get him into some rehab. Another basketball player who we all know that may have had some experiences like that as well was, I think, Lamar Odom. You know, they said he had some substance issues at some point in time, in which he had to kind of get some things worked out, maybe go through some rehab type of stance.
I mean, he almost died.
Correct. Yes, right. Yep, in Vegas. Yep. So, you know, there are stories like that around where we see people who actually does, you know, unfortunately, are able to get the help that they need. Whereas sometimes when it comes to the music industry, you know, you don't really see that a lot of times, you know what I mean? Especially for just because I think also too how the industry is in general, you know, it's like they almost, people make it seem, especially individuals that's inside of the industry, they make it seem like, you know, that's one of the hardest things to do is to be an entertainer, just simply because it's like, you know, there's so many people that don't care about you, so many people that's trying to get something from you, that, you know, as you're trying to go about your day and make your way, you run into a lot of trying to think of how I want to word this. I don't know. I guess it's like, it's almost like kind of like when we look at, you know, guys who make it to the league and you get drafted early on, they have a big contract early on, they don't necessarily know how to manage their money, they don't necessarily know how to look through things. So, you know, and on a front end, it looks like everything's all good and that they're doing really well. But then on the back end, you find out, oh, well, they're not getting paid from the record label, or, oh, they don't really have all of the money that they, you know what I'm saying, initially thought or looked like they were supposed to have. Eventually you see that they're broke, they're not doing as well as they were supposed to be doing, and things aren't as good as it should be. So I think when we look at it from that standpoint, you know, it's like the industry, that industry in itself is one that requires people to have a lot of diligence on how they're moving, you know, knowing their finances, knowing how they're spending. And then also I think to kind of contrast this again, recently we saw Cardi B just make a tweet and talking about groceries. And it kind of made some splash because people were like, oh, well, you're rich. Like, why are you worried about the price of eggs or price of lettuce or whatever the case may be? And I think that kind of goes into what we're talking about as far as protecting our legends. Like the first part of the protection starts with oneself. You have to kind of know your own affairs. And so one of the things she said was, I get a spreadsheet every week of how much money is going in and out. So I'm able to tell, you know what I'm saying, based off of each week, how much money is being used on what and what. And when I see something is going up 2 or 3 times within the last couple months, I'm asking myself, you know, why am I spending triple or double or triple what I was paying a few weeks back? Like, is something going wrong here? Are somebody stealing from me? You know what I'm saying? This, that, and the third. And she come to find out, no, that's just the inflation. That's just how, you know, the price of food is costing nowadays. And so, like she said, it's not that it necessarily was affecting her and that they won't be able to, you know, put food on the table. It was more so a shock to just see like, oh, I'm paying double or about what I was paying in the past. And I think that's good business. Like that's ways that we're talking about how we can kind of protect our legends by one, having them have the wherewithal to understand that they have to, one, protect themselves. And I think that's the first part, you know, making sure that you understand what your finances is like, making sure that you understand that, you know, you have the right type of resources around you to let you know when things are, when you may need to pivot, when you may need to adjust, you know, your living lifestyle so that you can allow yourself to continue to have, you know, a comfortable life as long as possible. And so I know we didn't necessarily have that issue with DMX. At some point in time, there were some issues about maybe if his money was running a little low. X also had
I think he ended up filing for bankruptcy or something, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, X also had a lot of kids as well, which is another.
Yeah, but also too Kanye though. But I wanted to mention Kanye. The reason why I wanted to mention Kanye is because I know that there's a lot of people that don't believe that Kanye has mental health issues, despite the fact that Kanye has in fact admittedly been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And the reason why I want to mention him is because I believe, like a lot of people think that Kanye lost his mind when his mother died. I think that Kanye actually had bipolar disorder before his mother died. When you watch the documentary, if you know anything about bipolar disorder, you see him exhibit many of the symptoms of bipolar disorder throughout the course of that documentary, even before his mother died. I believe that his mother actually was protecting him. And once she passed away, that guard was no longer there. And so, you know, we saw it happen. We saw him have more and more manic episodes. Hence why now, you know, some of these rants and things that he's been doing, it's not to say that he doesn't actually believe these things, right? He may very well believe the things that he's talking about, but somebody should have been there to guard him, because then he wouldn't have lost as much money as he lost as a result of the things that he's been going through. So, you know, that's my personal opinion about Kanye. I do think that the people that are around him need to do a better job of protecting him, because he is as frustrated as many people in our diaspora feel about Kanye, he's still ours. You know what I'm saying? Because when one minute we're super happy for him, proud of him, look at him here, Billy status, the whole nine, and then he starts doing all kind of crazy stuff, White Lives Matter, you know, going on all these crazy rants, talking about Jewish people, regardless of whether or not anything he says has validity. There's a way you have to go about doing things, and he's just doing them all willy-nilly. There's no structure to some of the things that he's been doing, and as a result, he's lost a lot, and he stands to lose so much more. And I think that it's important to keep him guarded and protected, just like you would any other legend, right? Because when you look at, you know, white counterparts, there's definitely plenty of white people out there that, first of all, they're not viewed the same way, right? Because like if you take a rock and roll person like Tommy Lee Jones, right? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll is how it goes. And so when they start wilding out, nobody's looking at them crazy. They're not really losing anything, because that's just a part of who they are. That's a part of the image. You know what I'm saying? That's definitely a part of the image, and it's easier for them. You know, as Black people, excuse me, as Black people, we have to work so much harder to get the things that our white counterparts get so much more easily, because why? They are already ahead of the game, right? When they're starting off. So because they're already ahead of the game when they're first starting off, you know, when they start acting up and wilding out, they don't need the same type of guidance and protection and you know, guarding as, you know, as we do. And I think that, you know, that often goes forgotten.
Yeah, I can give you an example of that as well. I think, you know, one of the things that also goes is I think it's not necessarily always their behavior isn't necessarily always put in the mainstream media as much as well. Like it's not necessarily showcased. And an example of that could be when we look at recently, there was a video that went viral of UFC owner Dana White and his wife got into an altercation at a nightclub or something like that. And it looked like it got a little physical. We don't necessarily know what all happened. You know, there wasn't really any other talks about things outside of it, but there was a recording of the video that shows. And that's something like where people saw it. It was what it was, but it wasn't on none of the mainstream media. It wasn't anything that kind of got, you know, taken out or context. And we referenced that, I think, in thought process to, you know, how the situation played out with Ray Rice. Ray Rice, there was a video of him getting into an altercation with his girlfriend at the time, or fiance, or you know, the mother of his child. And that cost him his whole career. You know, he ended up not being able to continue to working in the NFL after that, or being signed by any other team. And it was almost like, you know, he was just one of like the worst person in the world. Whereas now we see an owner of a team, or excuse me, owner of a sports franchise within, you know, the UFC and MMA fighting. He gets into the same altercation and it kind of gets swept under the rug, or if you will. You know, it was like, oh, you know, that's their business. That's a private situation type of situation. Whereas, you know, other times when we see this happen, you know, other times when we see those type of behavior happens on a domestic violence situation, especially with someone of color, you know, it's not necessarily always swept under the rug, and it's something that's always brought to the forefront. I think we can look at it from a standpoint of Chris Brown, who has continuously had to face issues because of the behaviors that he displayed when he was 16, 17. So those are like some of the differences in which, you know, we seen how other people are treated when they have some of the same exact issues. I know another person that, you know, we wanted to talk about was Aaron Carter. I think he was another individual who was a white male in the entertainment industry who I believe had an untimely passing, if I'm not mistaken. But he was also having issues with substance abuse and things of that nature, and it kind of wasn't necessarily plastered around and necessarily brought to make him look a fool or laughed at. I know nowadays the internet is a little bit different than how it has been in the past, so things kind of can go viral just from people doing skits and things on TikTok and stuff like that. Whereas in the past, it really wasn't as fast of a venue, and there wasn't necessarily like that market, that niche market of people kind of, you know, making fun of things that go on. You know, one person that does it really well is Spice Adams. He'll do like, you know, little reenactments, events and things, and a lot of times it's tasteful though. It's not when people are doing nothing too wild or anything disrespectful. It's just funny moments, you know what I'm saying? So but that's just an example of how there's a different day and time where, like, nowadays when you do certain stuff, there's going to be people that's going to reenact that just for, you know, the looks and the laughs. So that was one individual that I definitely
one person I did want to throw in the mix of that conversation is also Screech. I don't know, remember his name, but Screech from Saved by the Bell, right? growing up, we all looked at him one particular way. And then as we got older and we started finding out more about his life, and his substance abuse issues, he was having eating issues. He had some serious self-esteem issues going on. And once he started losing weight, Screech was getting into all kinds of stuff aside from drugs. Like, he became a porn star, all kinds of things. And he ended up, having an untimely demise as well. But the thing about it is, once that stuff got out there and was exposed, at that point, he was already far gone enough where he was like, I'm not changing. He had made that conscious decision to not, make changes to his life. And so, but you still never saw, I mean, there were a couple of times where you saw him doing some wild stuff, but at that point, like, he wasn't really being protected either, right? You do see that happen from time to time with white counterparts, but you don't see it happen nearly as often as you do with Black people. It's like a Black person can freaking trip and stumble, and next thing you know, it's viral. Like, case in point, I remember one time Beyonce was in a concert, right? She was in the middle of a concert and she sneezed. It made the news. Like, why is this news? That she sneezed? Beyonce's a human being. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's allowed to sneeze, cough. I'm pretty sure she goes to the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes we also have to remember that these people are also human. They're not robots. They're not superhuman. They're just talented individuals. And they're popular. So it makes them famous, and they get money because of that popularity and the things that they provide to society and who they are in society. And so, it doesn't mean that they don't need protection. And a lot of times people don't protect them the way that they should, because if they're receiving from them, they're afraid that offering the protection that they need is going to get them cut off. And the truth of the matter is, even if it does, like, I would rather get cut off trying to help somebody than not trying to help them and watch them die, or watch them hurt themselves or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I can live with that. I can totally live with that. And some people can, some people can't. I mean, to each his own. But, at the end of the day, I think that it's important to just recognize that, giving better protection to our legends is necessary, because we don't want them when it is their time to go. We don't need that kind of tarnish mark on their legendary status. You know what I'm saying? So, that's pretty much my final thought on that. I do believe that we have to find ways to protect them, whether that be, you do an intervention, you talk to their families. Even sometimes you have to walk away. Sometimes it's tough love if they're not willing to take care of themselves, because you also don't want to watch somebody die. So that's really hard to watch. And so I just think that those are some ways that you can offer solutions to protecting our legends. If you see somebody filming something, like, tell them to stop. Like, help that person. Instead of sitting there watching and making jokes over somebody's illness. I don't think there's anything funny about people being ill. So, those are my final thoughts, and some things that, are ways I think that people can help protect our legends.
Yeah, so for me, I think, like what Sam was saying, I think it starts with the artists themselves, just being knowledgeable about, the industry that they're in, looking at maybe individuals prior to them in that industry and some of the struggles that they have gone through, learning to find professionals that can, kind of help them with learning how to manage their lifestyles and things of that nature, whether it be financial accountants, whether it be chefs, whether it be, good personal, good management. I also think that after that, it could also have some parts lie on, the labels, to make sure that they have some type of thing, something set up for some of their artists who may eventually need additional assistance later on in life. You guys are still able to benefit off of their records and their publishing, things of that nature, anything like that. So there should be some, maybe like a fund or a trust that's available to, help artists who may need help with substance abuse and things of that nature. And lastly, I think that the onus falls on us as the consumers. You know, if we know that somebody has provided a contribution or contributed to the enjoyment of our lives by providing their artistry, that we should hold them up accountable and allow them to not necessarily accountable, but allow that person to have a space where they can feel comfortable, allow that person to have a space in which, you know, we're not necessarily looking to demean them or degrade them. And we can allow them to, you know, have moments of weakness and not get jumped on and not get, you know, made of memes. I know we talked about that in the past where we've seen, you know, guys cry, and the very next thing, that's the Jordan crying meme, or, you know, the R. Kelly, I'm fighting with my life meme, or, you know, so on and so forth. So I think, you know, that some of that onus comes up on the people as well, to make sure that they are, you know, using their heads to go. Now, I wanted to also transition into our Black businesses of the month, Black business of the month. This month, business that we're highlighting is the Miami Urban Contemporary Experience, aka Muse, MUCE, and it is an art production company that does art exhibitions, workshops, and festival productions for cultural programming and showing heritage type of events. So this can be things that's showing different artists from all types of all the areas of the diaspora. Some of their works and displays, they'll have events where they maybe have artists come out, you know, musicians come out, maybe they'll display some type of works, or, you know, provide people with a little bit more of a historical context on some things that's going on. As well as now I wanted to move into our book of the month, and it is by Sam Greenlee. It is The Spook Who Sat by the Door, which is a novel in which Mr. Greenlee had written. It's a story about a man who was the first Black CIA agent, and some of the things that he experienced while being in the CIA as a Black man. So that's the book of the month. It is called The Spook Who The Spook Who Sat by the Door. There was also a book that was, the book came out in 1969. There was a movie, I believe, that came out in 1978 or 74, based on this book as well. So you guys can check that out. And last but not least, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote of the week. And it is by a person named Brian McGill. And he says, do not make the mistake of thinking that you have to agree with people and their beliefs to defend them from injustice. And I thought that that was a great great quote, because one, you know, there's a lot of times where we can look at things and say, you know, we may not personally agree with the things that's going on or the way that certain people act, but at the same time, we need to understand that it is our job to make sure that we are looking after those individuals, because if it was us on the other end, we would want that to happen as well. We would want those individuals to have their time and the light, and we would want that same grace to be shown upon us. And so there we go. We want to say, so even if you don't agree with the message that someone is necessarily saying, I think it's good for us to allow that individual to have their space to go ahead and speak on what, you know, to speak on what they need to. And also for us to say, you know what, hey, they're just going through something right now. This isn't their best moments. We're going to give them that grace, because Lord knows I wouldn't want a camera on me at my weakest moment. So that being said, we want to thank you guys for coming and checking out this episode. We appreciate it. We have a lot of new things in store for you guys this year. We're going to be coming a lot harder. We're going to be going a little bit stronger with this thing and taking it to the next level. So we appreciate everybody for watching. If you enjoy our content and the things that we're making, trust and believe we got more coming for you, and it's going to be bigger and better. So thank you guys for that. You guys can always check us out here. Every Saturday we upload new episodes on our YouTube page. You can also check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Carnal Poise Podcast. You can reach out to us with any videos that you might want us to talk about or any subject matters that you would like us to discuss. You can also find our Instagrams and social media tags posted on this video here shortly. And catch us live on Wednesdays on Instagram as well, where we'll always be going over different names and events. And so with that being said, I do want to thank you guys for everything. I don't know, Sam, if you have any little thing you want to say real fast in closing, but I'm all set.
Yeah, just real quick, our socials and all that's going to be popped up at the end. One thing that's not on there, you can also follow me on Tagged. If you do go on Tagged, I'm Sam, SAMM. I Yam, YAMM. So you guys feel free to go ahead and tap in with us. I see Malik just tapped in, but we are actually closing out right now. But at the end of the day, we thank you. Thank you so much for following us and rocking with us for the past couple of years. We do appreciate it. And Happy New Year to each and every single one of you. We hope to see you all on Wednesday on IG for our What's Up Wednesday segment at 8:30. Other than that, make sure you like, share, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend and all that. And I think he said everything else. And that's pretty much it. Malik, did you have anything that you wanted to say before we went ahead and shut it down?
Not really. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. And I guess I'll see everybody next week.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much, guys. Y'all have a good one.